Greetings and salutations. East Spencer Kyte, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man, here on Wednesday morning, I guess noon now that it's come out. October 26th. That means one question for every fight as we look at UFC Vegas 63, headlined by Kattar and Arnold Allen. This is what I have always traditionally called a hangover card. We are coming out of a pay-per-view and a massive pay-per-view at that. And so we're all still sort of buzzing and talking about and thinking about the ramifications and sort of takeaways, outcomes that happen in the wake of something like UFC 280, where a lot happened, a lot took place. New lightweight champion. Aljamain Sterling retains as bantamweight champion. Sean O'Malley beats Petr Yan. Like, tons to talk about, tons to think about. And yet we have to move forward into a card. And this card is just, obviously, it's nowhere near the magnitude, the name value of last weekend's card, but it has some intriguing elements. It has some interesting fights. It has some prospects nonetheless. And it has pieces of every fight has a piece, has something that piques my interest, that makes me want to talk about it, that is going to have me paying attention on Saturday. And so we'll get right to it. Arnold Allen versus Kattar, as I said, in the main event, a very important featherweight fight. And my question is whether Allen is ready to break into title contention. If you remember back in March in London, when Arnold Allen defeated Dan Hooker in the first round, we did a live stream here at SevereMMA, myself, Ian, Harry, Sean, all of us, when Arnold Allen said, now that I've got this done, give me Kattar, kind of moaned because this shouldn't be the fight that Arnold Allen has to take. But here he is, and this is the opportunity. And this, to me, is it's like a lesser version of the Islam Makhachev thing we talked about last week, right? Going into that fight against Charles Oliveira, Islam had never faced a top 5, top 10 opponent through no fault of his own. Some important matchups fell apart. But we just weren't quite sure, or we didn't have the evidence, I guess, to confirm or to point to for his being able to hang with somebody at that level. Now, obviously, on Saturday, we saw that he can, in fact, hang and compete at the highest levels in the UFC. That has been confirmed. And that's kind of what we're going to get on Saturday with Arnold Allen, one way or the other, right? It's either going to be confirmed or proven wrong, because Kattar is legit. He is cemented in the top 5. Right now, he is the guy that you sort of have to beat to get into title contention. It's not a spot he wants to be in, so there's added motivation and drive and push coming into this one, especially coming off a frustrating fight result, I should say, against Josh Emmett. And so this is where we're going to find out a little bit of the things that we don't know yet about Arnold Allen. This is where we're going to get some of the answers that we don't have yet from Arnold Allen in terms of his ability to put everything together and to remain poised and calm and have success against a fighter of this skill level. It's a huge fight. It's a huge opportunity. Can't wait to see it. So intriguing, so fascinating to me. And I look forward to seeing how it plays out on Saturday. Co-main event, welterweight fight between Max Griffin and Tim Means. My question is, can Griffin make the necessary adjustments to get moving forward again? So what I mean is that in his loss to Neil Magny last time out, a split decision loss that stopped his 3-fight winning streak, it wasn't some blowout, right? It wasn't some dominant fight where Neil Magny just ran through Max Griffin and showed that he's not capable of being in the top 15. It was a pretty close fight. And it felt to me in watching it like there were just one or two little moments where Max Griffin needed to make an adjustment, needed to either up the pressure, needed to get in on the hips, like whatever it was, there were just very small moments that he needed to fix. And I'm curious to see if he can do that coming out of that fight and going into this one with Tim Means, because he feels to me like a classic putting it all together late guy. Somebody that's just, he's been around for a while. He's been sort of a mid-pack welterweight for a number of years, But then starting with that fight against Ramiz Brahima, where he busted up his ear, followed by a knockout over Song Keenan, and then a win over Carlos Condit, has just started to build some momentum. And I want to see if the Magny result is the end of that momentum or the start of the next step forward for Max Payne Griffin. Third fight on the main card, heavyweights Jared Vanderaa and Waldo Cortes-Acosta. My question is, why is this on the main card? I'm not usually the why is this on the main card, how is this on the main card guy, right? I'm not the guy that comes here and says that. I've often been the guy that's like, look, fight card placement doesn't matter if we know it's a good fight. But I do understand and recognize that other people and the presentation of things are important. So you see a main card fight, you think it has greater significance than a preliminary card fight. Now, I can answer my own question here in terms of why is this on the main card? It's on the main card because Waldo Cortes-Acosta won on Contender Series earlier this year by first round knockout. He is on a string of first round knockouts, and this is a chance to sort of highlight him in his debut against a guy that's struggling now, a guy that's also a Contender Series graduate that's struggling. It feels very similar to when Karine Silva was put on the main card for her promotional debut earlier this year. She came off Contender Series last year. We've seen it with Caio Bahayo. We've seen it with Gelton Almeida. The problem is that for each of those athletes that goes in and just has a great debut and shows right away that they are capable of making some noise in their respective divisions, or in Almeida's case, across two divisions, you have guys like Vanderaa that have struggled. You have guys like AJ Dobson, who fell to 0-2 last weekend in Abu Dhabi and has subsequently come out on his Instagram and been like, I'm leaving Immortal MMA. Thanks for everything they taught me, but I got to go find something else to help me get to where I want to go. And so while I fully understand wanting to showcase and promote and spotlight athletes coming off of these various shoulder programs, whether it's Contenders, whether it's The Ultimate Fighter, whether it's looking for a fight, there's a point, or there's a feel to me. It's almost like, for me, I would rather see them have one preliminary card fight that sort of confirms they should be on the main card or are capable of like being somebody that's spotlighted, because this one can go south in a hurry, right? Like if this doesn't end quickly, it turns into one of those ugly heavyweight slogs that none of us want to see. And I just wonder if first time jitters against a durable, grimy, kind of dangerous in a like can beat you if you're not very good sense Jared Vanderaa turns this into one of those fights. And we end up really asking, why was this on the main card? Middleweight bout, Josh Fremd, Tresean Gore. My question for this one is, can we just accept that some guys aren't ready to be here? I mentioned shoulder programming just a second ago, some of these feeder shows, right? Josh Fremd came from looking for a fight, won a fight in the FAC promotion, James Krause's show, with the Looking for a Fight crew there. Trey Gore was on season 23 of The Ultimate Fighter, a member of Team Ortega, advanced to the finale, blew out his knee, came back, eventually had that fight with Brian Battle, lost that. Second fight out, started okay, but got knocked out by Cody Brundage. And here we are in a fight between two middleweights from shoulder shows. Neither of them have a win. Neither is really in very limited action shown us that they are ready to have consistent success at this level. And that's okay, because having consistent success at this level is supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be hard, right? Like this isn't supposed to be the place that everybody comes and wins most of their fights. That's not how this works. And so to me, I almost want to see the UFC and more so fans, media, critics, observers, just acknowledge that there needs to be more guys that are sort of like minor league call-ups, right? We see it in Major League Baseball. somebody gets called up for 2 weeks because someone else goes on the DL and they can't quite hack it. They can fill the spot and they can maintain a spot. They can be the 8th or 9th man in the order and play reasonable defense in the field, but they're not somebody long-term. They're not going to stick on the 25-man roster. Or if they are, they're at the very end of the bench. They very seldom get into the game. And when they do, you see why that is. That's what this feels like. And it needs to be okay for us to say, these guys are that. Like, we don't have to always hold out that somebody just needs an opportunity or they just need a little more seasoning. Like, this isn't the place where you should be getting all the seasoning, right? Tresean Gore is very young in his career. It's still very raw. I like the raw materials, but he needs a whack of experience. He needs to go to the regional circuit and fight 3 times a year against guys where he can try things out and learn things and grow and develop rather than getting knocked out on the biggest stage in the sport. Josh Fremd is somebody that has been around the regional circuit a little bit prior to this in LFA and then that appearance in FAC. He's 28 years old. He works with a good camp at Factory X, and maybe he gets here eventually. Maybe he wins this fight and this is a bit of a turning point. And the first one against Fluffy Hernandez was just a little bit of jitters, and he shows that he can hang. He shows that he can be here. But we need to get to a point where we accept and acknowledge that not everybody is supposed to be here. I'd love for the UFC to get there. It's not going to happen. They're in the business of having as much talent as they can have. And so I get that. That makes sense to me. But when we're talking about these fights and we're assessing these athletes, it needs to be okay for us to just say, like, it's an entertaining fight. This should be a competitive and entertaining fight, but neither of these guys right now profiles as somebody that's going to go forward too far in the middleweight division. And we have to just be okay with that. And sometimes there are going to be those fights on these cards, especially these cards, especially these hangover cards, because last week was loaded and UFC 281 in New York is loaded. And so the stuff in between and around is going to be a little light. And this one is sort of the indication of the lightness of this card. Next up, the main card opener, great fight in the light heavyweight division between Dustin Jacoby and Khalil Rountree Jr. My question is, who takes the next step forward? Dustin Jacoby, since coming back to the UFC through the Contender Series, is 6-0-1. He's on a 4-fight winning streak heading into this one. Khalil Rountree Jr. has been up and down throughout his UFC career since coming off The Ultimate Fighter a number of seasons ago. Team Joanna, Team Claudia lost to Andrew Sanchez in the finals. But over his last 2 fights, he's 2-0 with a pair of just vicious, hellacious second-round stoppages. To me, both of these guys are already dark horses in this division, and the winner of this fight on Saturday moves forward in that, right? Becomes sort of the one dark horse. Jacoby is currently ranked number 13. The winner will maintain that spot or move forward 1, maybe 2 positions. I don't think they'll go too far because you start running into some of the names that are a little bit more established. But the reason I'm really interested in this, and I ask the question of who will take the next step, is because after this one, the winner's fighting people we know. The winner's fighting people of consequence in this division, right? Nikita Krylov, Johnny Walker. Maybe we get into the winner or the loser of the upcoming Dominic Reyes-Ryan Spann fight. Like, then we're starting to talk about real momentum and getting into the thick of the division where a couple more wins and we're talking about title contention. And I don't think that was a thing anybody thought of initially for either of these guys over the last couple of years. Nobody thought that for Jacoby when he got back. Nobody really thought that about Khalil Rountree Jr. when he was going through those sort of ups and downs and inconsistencies. But both have seemingly figured it out a little bit and put it together a little bit and are in that position where they're getting close, and whoever wins this moves into a very good position going forward. Head to the prelims. Middleweight division, Phil Hawes versus Roman Dolidze. My question is, which one gets me believing a little bit more? So I have to admit that Phil Hawes is one of those guys that has previously in prior incarnations of 10 Things I Like been a fighter I can't quit, which was one of the subheads I used to just explain, like, I like watching this guy fight. I believe in them. I think the potential is there. I think the upside is there. Maybe they just missing one little piece and they need to turn a corner, something, right? Phil Hawes has been one of those guys, and I was very much hurt by the loss to Chris Curtis. While he got a win back subsequent to that against Duran win last time out, and it was an absolutely lopsided performance, I'm still not all the way back on the bandwagon. I haven't purchased a ticket. I'm still standing in line. And as for Roman Dolidze, he's 4-1 in the UFC, 2 wins on either side of a very boring, lackluster fight against Trevin Giles in his middleweight debut. His first middleweight win was, again, not really a very tepid performance against Laureano Staropoli. But last time out, he looked great. Marched across the cage, into the clinch with Kyle Dawkins, hit him with a knee, down he goes, fight's over in less than a minute. Great showing. But I'm not sure whether that's the everyday showing or that's the here's what happened this time showing, or whether it's a replicable thing, right? And so this fight feels like a fight that's going to answer a couple of those questions, or the questions about each guy. Can Dolidze replicate what he did last time out and be more consistent in that regard? Can Hawes do all the things that are positive that we see when we see positives from Phil Hawes? It's tremendous. They're great positives. But then he also is a little bit chinny at times and gets clipped and gets tired. And so can either of them reduce the downside, reduce the not so great pieces of their game, elevate the positives of their game, and take a step forward? Because in this division at middleweight, there's always room to grow. That lower third of the top 15 is always sort of a revolving door where there's opportunities to come in, and there's some older guys that are still hanging out, and there's not a ton of young guys or new guys moving forward. And so the winner of this has that opportunity. Now, stylistically, this one could be a lot of fun. It could also be boring. So just be prepared for that. But know that the winner of this takes another step forward, and we're going to find out, or at least I'm going to find out, if either of them can convince me to believe in them a little more after Saturday. Move to the heavyweight division. Andrei Arlovski, Marcos Rogerio de Lima. My question is, will Arlovski get UFC win number 24? So the Pitbull is currently 1 win back behind Jim Miller on the all-time wins list. He is 2 appearances behind Jimmy for most appearances in UFC history. I also would wager that you probably don't remember or know or recall that Andrei Arlovski's on a 4-fight winning streak. Now, a couple of those are split decisions that you could argue should have went the other way. I know Jake Collier would very much make a case for deserving the nod in their fight earlier this year. And say what you will about his place in the division and who he's fighting and all of those things, but Arlovski's longevity is amazing to me. It's outstanding to me. And so for him to be in this position where he can equal Jim Miller at the top of the all-time wins list is really impressive, because there were 3 or 4 times that we were throwing dirt on this dude and writing his eulogy, right? There were some runs that were just bad, that it was like, all right, well, the years have caught up to him, and this is the end of Andrei Arlovski. It was fun. We'll see you later. And each time he's come back, and especially this current version has adapted his style, has traded away some of the things that he used to do. He's not getting in brawls. He's using his wrestling more. He's using kicks more. He's trying to maintain range and distance more. He's tucking the chin more. And like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a couple months older than Andrei Arlovski. I really enjoy it. It's fun to see. And I want to see if he can get that record, because he's done. Andrei Arlovski is one of those guys to me that sort of gets forgotten a little bit. And I know Jed Meshew at MMA Fighting does the like Andrei Arlovski is the best heavyweight in UFC history. Prove me wrong. But he's one of them. Like, just, he's a former champion. He fought for the title a couple other times as well with Tim Sylvia. He's going to have some of the most wins in UFC history and most appearances and things like that. And those things matter. It doesn't make him the absolute best, but it makes him a central figure in this division, especially given the duration and the longevity that he's had. And so I want to see if he can get it. I want to see if he can get that number. I want to see if he can eventually get to 25. I want to see if he can get to, 40 odd appearances. Like, there's some stuff for Arlovski to chase, and it's been fun to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again on Saturday. Another middleweight fight, Junyong Park and Ugly Man Joseph Holmes. My question is, can the Iron Turtle be more than this? So Junyong Park is another one of those guys that I've sort of always held out a little hope for, because there's something about whatever it is, there's an ineffable quality to this man that I watch him compete and I think, man, it's just, if he could just. And let's be honest, he's probably not going to just. This is probably as good as it gets. That said, the losses in the UFC are to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. Those are two not bad losses, right? Those are going to continue to age well if those athletes continue doing well. He's 4-2 overall in the UFC. Back in the day, he choked out Ray Cooper III, who's a guy that everybody likes over in the PFL. And this is an opportunity against a guy in Joseph Holmes, who is still relatively young in both his UFC and his MMA career, has shown a little bit of promise, but doesn't have the experience that Park has. And so I just want to see if the South Korean can come out here and use a little bit of that experience, use the fact that he's the older, wiser, more tested guy to get the younger fighter out of there, right? This to me is one of those fights where a quality veteran that has the ability to keep moving forward and is coming off a loss to somebody who just happens to be better than them goes out and makes a statement and says, this young guy isn't ready for me yet, and starts going forward. And I just want to see if that can happen. That's my question. That's what I'm paying attention to in this particular fight. We move on to the featherweight division, Chase Hooper versus Steve Garcia. My question is, can Hooper get me hyped? And so Chase is a kid at 23 that I've been watching throughout his MMA career, throughout his time sort of in the UFC universe. Debuted on the Contender Series, won a developmental deal, went back to the regional circuit for about a year. I think he got a draw and a win, and then made his UFC debut against Daniel Tamer. I want to make sure I get that right. It's Daniel, not David. And got a first round stoppage win, and instantly there was buzz. And that sort of petered out, understandably, because he's 3-2 in his UFC career now as we come into this one. He's someone that I think has upside, but I'm just not sure how far that goes yet. Like, I don't know whether he's a 3-star prospect, a 4-star prospect. He's not a 5-star prospect, because if he was, we'd already know it. I'd already have that sense, right? Muhammad Makayev, 5-star prospect. Chase isn't there. But what I want to see in this fight, because it feels like the first time he's in a fight where he's heavily favored and he should go out and get this victory, is whether he can do that, whether he can get me to a position where I go, okay, this one was different. His fight against Felipe Colares last time out, super entertaining, and Chase is always going to be in entertaining fights. He deserves full marks for his toughness, his resiliency, his willingness to keep fighting to the bitter end. We saw that in his losses to Alex Caceres and Steve Peterson. We saw that in his come from behind rally to beat Peter Barrett. And even, truthfully, some in that fight with Colares, where he just kept attacking and eventually tired that man out and got the stoppage. But what I want to see is, can he turn some of that grittiness, toughness, work ethic, pace into something that really takes root and gets me excited? Like, you look at someone like Bilal Muhammad, who fought last week, right? The individual weapons aren't necessarily great for Bilal. Striking is good. Wrestling is good. Conditioning is good. Conditioning's great. Jiu-jitsu is good. But he puts it all together and the package becomes, oh my God, I got to see this guy fight, because it's just suffocating and drowns you in nonstop action. And he's in your face and he's beating good guys. And I want to see if Chase Hooper can sort of develop some of that, because the jiu-jitsu is legit. The length for the division is really intriguing at 6'1". And so this is a fight where if he's more than just a 3-star guy that's going to be in constantly fun fights, he goes out, he makes a statement, he gets Steve Garcia out of there quickly, and we come away on Sunday going, all right, we got to start paying attention to Chase Hooper and talking about Chase Hooper a little bit more. 2 left. Flyweight fight, Cody Durden versus Carlos Mota, came together on short notice. Durden was supposed to fight Clayton Rodriguez. Mota steps in, and my question is, what can Mota show in his short notice debut? He is a guy that fought for the LFA title earlier this year, losing to Charles Johnson in the 5th round of a really entertaining back and forth. And Charles Johnson subsequently called up to the UFC, fought Muhammad Mokaev in London, the second show, losing a decision. Since then, Mota has logged back-to-back first-round finishes. He's 27 years old. He is a finisher. He is an intriguing guy. He's someone that has been sort of on the radar, right? Somebody that we've been paying attention to. If you watch sort of outside of the UFC and the regional shows and keep track of some names that we're probably going to see, he's been on that list. And this is an intriguing matchup to figure out where he fits in this division, because Cody Durden is solid. He's coming off a rebound win over JP Bays last time out after he lost to Mokaev in London in March. He's solid everywhere, but he's not a dynamo, right? He's not a guy that's just going to smoke some newcomer. He's not that dude. And so flyweight getting deeper, Durden feeling like a very good entrance exam for Carlos Mota. I just want to see if he can come out and get a good win, if he can start making a little bit of noise. And this weekend will tell us. Preliminary card opener. At least I think it will be, because it came together very late notice. Christian Rodriguez against Joshua Weems. And my question is, can Rodriguez be the next David Onama? So if you remember back, I think it was probably just a year ago now, David Onama made his short notice debut up a division at lightweight, facing Mason Jones, the former 2-time Cage Warriors champion. And he looked good. He lost, but he looked good. He pushed Mason Jones throughout. It was a good fight. It was a good performance. And it was one of those ones that made me highlight his name and just remember him. If you go back to the Keyboard Kimura newsletter at the start of the year, the fighters to watch, pull up featherweight, see that I wrote about David Onama and said, essentially, he looked good up a division. Let's see what happens when he goes back to his natural weight class. He went down, knocked out Gabriel Benitez in the first round, earned a victory in his second fight as well, lost his third, but growing pains, but for the most part, did what we expected him to do, continued to show out, built off that impressive debut when back in his natural weight class. So here's Rodriguez's turn. He debuted earlier this year up at featherweight against Jonathan Pierce, who is unbeaten in that division and looked very good thus far. And he pushed JSP. He gave him a good run. It was a good fight. It was a competitive fight. If you remember, Pierce got into that interview afterwards and was exhausted, just spent, and had to fight hard to keep Christian Rodriguez from coming all the way back and getting him out of there in the third. And so now he goes back down to bantamweight. It's his natural weight class. It's a little less daunting assignment against a newcomer in Joshua Weems, and a real chance to sort of show out and potentially validate those thoughts that we had, right? Potentially validate the I'm the next David Onama. So we'll see if that happens on Saturday. Those are the questions. That's the show. Thank you for watching. I thank you for subscribing to the SevereMMA YouTube page. Please subscribe to the Patreon as well. Tons of good stuff. The old triangle was back this week. Speaker's Corner is coming up tomorrow. Sean and Graham on the big show. Harry's got some stuff out there. Io's got some stuff out there. Andy and I did Hot Topic this week, talking about some of the fallout subjects from UFC 280. So go check that out. I will be back here tomorrow with 10 things. Friday with the predictions and the betting show. Saturday on the website with a recap of the event. Looking forward to this one. I know it's weird. I know I said it's a hangover card, and I like hangover cards. I'm going to tease one of tomorrow's 10 things. I like hangover cards because I get to just sit and enjoy the fights. I hope you do as well. I hope you're getting excited. I hope you're looking forward to just having a relaxing time watching grown adults punch each other in the face on Saturday. I hope you'll join me for it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Happy hump day. Enjoy the rest of your week. Be good to one another. Take care of one another. Know that you're loved. We'll talk soon.